As an electrician, one of the jobs I'm often asked to do is to change light fittings, be it pendant in a brand new house or older fittings such as this in an older building. Now, before we get into the realms of looking at the cabling and all the safety aspects that are involved, the very first thing we should all do is check that all the parts are there with the new fitting and that it's not damaged in any way, because obviously there's no point in continuing the job if that is the case. Also, make sure that either yourself or your client has purchased the correct light bulbs to go with it, because 9 times out of 10 they don't come with them. So let's get it out of the box. Always be careful if you're using a knife that you don't push it in too far, because you might damage the internal contents. Fixing kit. You love it when they stick boxes inside the boxes, and that's an empty box, obviously used for packaging. Okay, so it all seems to be here. It's got all the end pieces. Just check that none of the glass is broken. Great, everything seems to be okay, it's all in one piece. One thing I'm going to point out to you right now is that a lot of these fittings come with these really annoying, well, I think they're annoying and I hate them. I absolutely detest these things. Silly little junction box. That has, I'll show you in more detail in a moment, but they have a tiny little connector block in there, and if you've got lots of cables, which you quite often have in a pendant, especially if you're in a new build and it's all linked daisy chained around the house, you will never ever get all the cabling inside of that. So personally, I do away with that completely and I use my own junction. Similarly, fixings that they come with, are usually cheap and nasty. 9 times out of 10, because it's made of such a soft steel, if they're indeed made of steel, that the head will just chew. Or I've had it in the past where I've not even put much effort on the end of it and the head's actually snapped off. So for quite some time now, these straight in the bin. So important job to do now. I'm going to turn the light bulb on to prove that there's power going to it. And then I'm going to go and find the fuse box, turn it off, and then I'm going to make sure that the power's off here. Obviously the light is now on, so it makes it easier for me to find the correct circuit to switch off in a moment. 2 things to be aware of, which you probably know anyway. You've got the LED light bulbs and you've got the halogen light bulb. This one's LED, but if it was a halogen, by now that would have reached a ridiculous temperature. So err on the side of caution if you're dealing with the old halogen ones, and carry a cloth or a rag, something similar like that, so if you need to take it off whilst it's still hot, you protect your hands from them being burnt. Off now to find the fuse box, turn the power off. So we're at the fuse box, found the circuit that's marked lights down, crudely, and there we go. On to the fun part of dismantling the existing light. Now, this could be fun because it's been up here for many years. How long I couldn't tell yet, but going by the age of it and the tarnish on it, it's probably been up here since the house was built in the early 80s. In their defence though, it's not that dusty. So it's obviously been looked after. There's no need to just chuck these things. You can keep them in one piece, do so, because you never know, the owner may wish to sell them on if they can. Okay, so that's not how they come apart. Screwdriver. Again, try not to lose these screws because they're the same colour and style of the actual fitting. It could be that the owner just wants to discard it and I'm just rather than tip, in which case it doesn't really matter. But I would say that with retro lights like this, it wouldn't take much to polish them and clean them up. And you never know, someone may pay more money for these than what your client spent on the replacement light fittings. Okay, so here we go. Definitely quite old, the old ceramic junction boxes, haven't seen these for quite some time. But before we carry on any further, I need to double check that the power is actually dead. So this is my tester. There are various different types out there. I've set it to the voltage settings and it's currently reading minus 25 volts, which obviously should be because it's not connected to anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test between the permanent live and the earth. So the permanent live is just tucked up there and onto the earth. No change. Onto the switch live, and I know that it's still on because I haven't touched the switch since we turned the light bulb on a moment ago. And that's dead. So now I'm going to check again between the switch live as on there and the neutral. Just a double check. And go back from the neutral to the permanent live. And there's nothing there. So now I've checked that it's safe to work on, I can completely dismantle everything and start to fit the new light fitting. So one of the issues I usually find is that a client has tried to change the light fitting themselves. Normally it's never ever an issue because they're very simple. But where people normally get caught at is the switch wire cable. Now this one here is black. Quite often they're black or new colours which are blue. But there should be a brown marker on there, or if it's old school, there'd be a red marker to say, hey, I'm a switch cable. Quite often they fall off, they get deteriorated, or back in the day they just didn't bother putting them on. So what happens is the customer takes all the cabling apart, goes to put it back together again, and then the fuse box just goes clack, doesn't want to reconnect. So my first job I normally do is I always disconnect the switch cable first, leaving everything else in situ. Remove any so-called protection, the heat shield thing on there, and there isn't anything on there. Now what I tend to do, some people like this, some people hate this, I use PVC tape. Main reason for using this is because once I put it on, it's not going to come off because it's stuck on there. Disadvantage is over time it will go sticky, sometimes it gets heat damage to it so it gets brittle and falls off. But piece of sleeving, which is another thing I'd have to purchase, another thing I'd have to cut, and another thing that once you're in the middle of wiring it all together, would just simply fall off. So that's why I use a bit of brown sleeving, a bit of brown PVC tape, which incidentally I've literally just finished the roll off. So bear with me whilst I go and find another roll, and we'll continue with the change of the light fitting. So brand new roll, straight fresh out of the van. Doesn't need masses, just enough to wrap around it. Nice and tight. And there we go. So now the important one that normally gets people into trouble has now been labelled. And now I can go ahead and disconnect the others. Making off these old ceramic blocks. And yeah, that's the old light fitting. Probably classic in its day. Is there a date in there? It's always interesting when you find those. No, there's not. There's no date, no manufacturer. Okay, anyway, so now I'm going to take the rest of this out. I'm going to unscrew the horrible flathead screws which are quite badly bodged in there, I can see, because whoever did that doesn't know how to do a straight line, and they put the screw in at a right angle. So I expect that's going to cause me a bit of grief soon, but we'll find out in a second when I take it down. One thing to be aware of as well, with modern day RCDs, the chances are that when I take this cover plate off the ceiling and pull it through, I'm likely to catch the neutral with the earth. Now, if your RCDs are sensitive enough, they will trigger. Not because there's any current running through, but because the device thinks, oh, there's a fault going on there, so it's just a safety aspect. Nothing for us to worry about, but obviously if your client's working in the property at the same time, be on their computers, etc., you should have warned them beforehand anyway that this is a possibility that could happen. Wish me luck. Now you can use a hand screwdriver to undo these, but if they're in a joist, it's going to be quite difficult, so I just use an impact driver and just take it slowly. And just see what happens. And straight away, absolutely nothing. There we go. Three screw. Let me do that. Another trick actually. If you spread the cabling around the box that you're, or the fitting that you're taking down, as you take the screws out, the cabling will stop it from falling down on top of you. So you can, that way you can just concentrate on taking the screws out. Oh, look at that. Joy of joys, whopping great big. Oh look, there's a piece of wood that's just been dumped up underneath there, which is what we've been screwed into, but I'm not going to lose it because I'm probably going to need that again myself. And one thing that should have been done as well, as you can see on here, the cabling was running through this hole here, but there's no rubber grommet, or the metal's not been folded back to protect the cable from damage. So now the interesting part of fitting the new light. So what they've done here is they've put a little bit of wood just above here to help support the light fitting when it was screwed up. Why they've done that, I have no idea, because right across here is the joist. Now they could have just shifted the whole thing across a little bit and put the fitting here. So now I've got a big hole to deal with, so I'm going to have to reuse this piece of timber, because if I were to use the original bracket and put it there and put the light fitting up, roughly you can see there's a big hole there. Now I could do that, but it would mean having to repair the big hole that's there. I'll never ever be able to match the stipple effect that's on the ceiling, and also you've got the discoloration from the original paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little screw up down the side of the plasterboard to just fix that piece of wood in place to stop it from moving, and then I'm going to fix the bracket in place, ready for the light to go up. Now ordinarily I would ask the client which direction or rotation they would like the light fitting to put in, but sometimes there's no choice, you just have to go with what you've got. But if I can get that piece of timber there in line with the joist, when I come to do the other light fitting, which you can't see but it's just the other side of the room here, I can get them both in the same orientation because I can put the brackets in the same direction. So here's where the fun begins. A few different things to start with. Small long screw, 3.5mm by 40 I think that is, but either way it's only there to hold the piece of timber or the batten to the plasterboard so I can screw up into it. I have a much longer screw, doesn't matter what it is, become apparent very shortly. A pair of bent nose pliers. Just take these first, and if we can grab a piece of timber, there we go, got it. No, I haven't slipped. Okay, plan B, take it over again. Now the reason I went for bent nose means I don't have to get another pair out, because I could have anticipated that might happen. As I can go in from the side, hook it like so, and now I've got some tension on there because it's pushing up against the joist. Impact driver with the all important magnetic end, and now just slowly, if you can get in there, wind the screw somewhere into that batten. Doesn't matter where, just as long as you can get it in there, and it doesn't have to go in very far either. no, there we go. See, it doesn't always work plan first time, does it? But hey, that would be boring if it was simple. Be easy, but boring. So let's try that again. There we go, got a grab. So now what I can do, I've got something I can hold onto that piece of timber with and move it into the right place. So without catching the cabling, because I want to get it as close as possible to the centre of where the hole is. Let's see how long that timber is. Yeah, so the timber kind of, with the screw there, the edge of the timber is kind of about there. So I'm going to anticipate that that side is about the same, so we move it close to the centre as we can get it. Get your next screw ready. Just slowly pierce it up in there. Just watch out for any dust falling into your face. If you're that worried about it, wear a pair of goggles. And there we go, it's fixed into place. So now what I can do is just take that screw out, take the bracket from the actual light fitting, put it in the correct place, and then we can start wiring it up. So I'm going to use the original staining from the old light fitting as my reference point for the bracket. So I'm just going to put it up into place and get it as straight as I possibly can with a joist, and then just slowly again wind the screws up into place and hold it up there. A bit too much. I didn't want to over tighten it just to start with. Just make sure it's in place first. Yeah, and feel it biting the timber above it. And there we go. Okay, so now we go back to the light fitting, and I'm going to show you that really horrible junction block in there, which I'm going to get rid of. So what we're going to do, we're just going to open the box once I can get through all the silly sticker tape that's on here. Not the easiest of things to do these because I'm cheap and cheerful, but oh, there we go. And yeah, you see, because it's got the little tag on the side for the lid, and of course they've wrapped all the way around the other side with the tape on the label. And this is what I mean by the silly little junction. This one's not so bad actually in a way, because it actually moves in there, which gives you a bit of access. If you only had 3 cables, you only had the switch live cable of live, earth and neutral, then this would be adequate and it would be fine. But because I've got permanent lives up there, I've got more than one neutral, etc., I'm just asking for grief to try and fit all those cables into this junction. So what I'm going to do is just take it apart. If I can get it out, well, I don't really need to get it out, I just wanted to get it out to show you. Do you see what I'm talking about, of how small that is? You see, those terminals are pathetic. Now if you think you've got a big bunch of cable trying to go into one of those junctions, you're just asking to either have an end snap off because you've had to get it tight to hold it too tight to hold them all in, or it's just not going to work. So simply I'm just going to undo it, and similarly with the fixing kit that came with it, it's going to go straight in the bin. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back up to the pendant. I'm going to attach my connector blocks, so make my life easier for fitting the light. As we all know in this industry, time is money. So what I have here is the ideal connectors. You can use Wago. This is just what I happened to grab first about the toolbox. I've got the 2-way, which I'm going to fit onto the switch cable. I've got 2 neutrals, so we have 3-way on there. There we go. I go straight into there. Obviously I've already checked the ends of the cabling to make sure they're not damaged in any way, so they go on. I've got 3 permanent lives. Again, I just need a 3-way for that. Stick those in. I like to try and keep them in a nice straight order. It just makes it a bit easier when it comes to fitting the light at the moment. And because all the earths are already bunched together in a group, I've just taken a 6 amp chock block and a screwdriver, because it's actually just quicker just to keep them all together and put a chock block on the end than it is for me to separate it, re-earth everything, just to put it into another style of junction box. Now we can just make sure that they're all easy to get hold of. I'm going to open up the third catch where I need it on there. There's plenty of space in there for the cable. So now I'm just going to take the light fitting, put it up and wire it in. So another thing to help speed up the process is that with this light fitting there's glass shades, and they all have these metal fixtures that hold it in, well, fixings should I say, that hold it in place. I've already taken most of them off, but I'll just take the last one off because otherwise you have to do it from up there. So now we just wire it in, make sure you get the right way round. So neutral with the neutral, just literally goes in. In place, make sure it's nice and firm. And the great thing about these connectors is that they'll just hold it in place, so you don't have to worry about holding the lamp, although this is a very light lamp as it is at the moment anyway. That also makes it a lot easier when it comes to fixing the earth into the chock block, because obviously you need to hold the cable and hold the chock block and screw all at the same time. So there we go, that's the neck nice and firm. So just make sure that all the connections are nice and safe and that they're in position, so that we can just offer it up. And there we go. All we need to do now is tighten those fixings up and put the glass shades in. I know some of you are probably cringing right now. Why is he not using a Phillips head screwdriver? Well, because I'm lazy, to be honest. And the other thing, of course, is you don't want to over tighten and strip the heads on the screws. And also, if you're very particular, like a certain wife of mine, for example, if I knackered the end of that head and she happened to look up, she'd spot it a mile off. Right, so let's get these glass shades on, get the light fittings, the light bulbs in, and then we can put the power back on and check it's all good. So contrary to what I've just said, I've actually just turned the power back on in the fuse box. Good to start with, the RCD didn't trigger, so I know there's no fault with the earth straight away. But what I do need to do is put a light bulb, or sorry, an LED, into the fixture before I've added all the glass shades, and I'm just going to switch it on and make sure it works, because if there is a fault or a loose connection up there, I won't know until this point. And if I've got the glass shades on, I'm either going to have to take them all back off again, or it's going to add quite a lot of added weight to the fixture whilst I take it back off to check the wire. So let's just see if it works. Happy days. So what I can do now is I'm going to take that bulb back out, and I'm going to put all the shades on, put all the LEDs on, and then write the invoice. I'm just getting all the glass shades ready and lined up. Be careful with these that you don't break them, drop them. Oh, sorry. So anyway, these got the little caps that go inside the fitting, like so. Now you've got to get these bang on dead straight, because if they twist, don't go on right, you can actually break the fitting itself. To be honest, they're pretty horrible, but at least you only have to do it once. Well, 6 times in this case. Also, when you do it, don't over tighten it, because you can see that bending. I've had it in before where I've actually snapped the shaft. So it comes back off. There we go, fittings. Now to repeat another 5 times. Okay, so the last one's about to go in. And now we're just going to switch it on. Ta-da! And you can see one of the light bulbs So you're not in there properly. There we go, hadn't fitted it in there properly. So it's always good to double check your work once you finish. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this video informative. As always, any comments or questions, please leave them below in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm off for a cup of tea now, and I'm going to continue doing the next light in the room. So until next time. Dee 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 dee.